Hello, everybody.
Hey, Roger.
Hello.
Hey everybody!
Yellow.
Thanks so much
Yellow
for making the accommodation for us on the North American West Coast. Really helped. Thank you.
Roger, have you been under the sun lamp?
Yes.
I don't know. I've gone yellow, haven't I? It's this.
You are orange or yellow.
Yeah, a bit off color.
My fake tan's gone really wrong.
You go for Strictly Come Dancing or something.
You look, if you put on a green shirt, you would look like Max Headroom. Max Headroom.
There's one for the teenagers.
Yeah, I remember.
All right.
Philip says we're already live on YouTube. Just FYI.
All right.
I think Jim's showing us how it should be done. That looks great, mate. Well done.
So I missed that one, Roger. What was that?
I said I think you're showing us how it should be done. That logo looks great, mate. Well done.
Yeah. Well, I wonder where that logo came from, Rog.
That looks awesome.
Jim's been to the printers this morning.
Are you super imposing that in software, or is that a sticker on the wall?
Say yes, Jim.
That's real.
Wow.
Wow, that's commitment.
Proper set and staging.
Look at that. That's commitment. That is wallpaper.
I love it. Now I want to see it on the car for the next talk.
Right then. Okay, so we are up at 1 minute past. I believe that we are live on YouTube. So thank you for the live stream. I haven't seen Adam on the call yet.
Adam's not coming.
Oh, okay, but I've got that's Rob on the call. Yes, thank you, Rob. I can see him now. Have we got Phil on the call?
Phil's streaming.
Have we got is Phil around? Yeah, Phil. Thank you for that. So note taking. So thank you very much for that, guys. Gosh, we're up to 38 participants already. So we will crack on then. So without further ado, if we could all make sure that we have entered our name into the roll call at the foot of the agenda document, I'd appreciate that. If someone could stick the agenda in the chat for me, just in case anybody has not got there yet. Thank you. Thanks for that, Rob. Yeah, okay then. So no real takeaways from last week, from the last call. I think we're all pretty know what we're doing really. All these are available online as well, so you can check all the agendas. I have been through and updated all the results in the on the agendas as well. Just a quick heads up, can we please make sure that we say our name and organisation as we come on the call for the people, for the benefit of the live stream. We appreciate that. And we haven't got any tips to go to a vote today, but we have got Rob on the call, and they're going to be, as a couple of tips to be presented as we go through as part of section 4 or section 5, I can't remember. So if you'd like to work down the working group status calls, and we've got arbitration first, please. Thank you. Brett or Douglas?
This is Brett. We're good to go. I made a note of where we are in the agenda, but we've got enough good people to launch. We're good to go on that. We've got other people sort of hovering around in the background. If there should be some sort of a massive problem at launch, like a bunch of stolen private keys or something, there are a bunch more people who are watching with interest. But unless there's some unanticipated problem, we've got more than enough to get going. And now that we've got all the paperwork finalized, it will be much easier to onboard someone in the future, since it was pretty hard when we didn't have paperwork finalized.
In addition to that, I mentioned on our last call that I was going to be working on a arbitrator handbook. I've set that aside a bit because I think that's a better post-launch, a better way, something to do in that month after we launch while we're electing arbitrators. And so I'm trying to focus my efforts more on things that get us to a go vote now. But we're in pretty good shape. thanks largely to Brett's pulling people in. And I do know we could put one more last call out for people. If you have people who are arbitrator minded in your life or in your circle, that would be great. And we would love to have more people from more countries. But right now we have 5, and I think we have a couple more circling, and ECAF only has 6. So we're certainly doing pretty well.
Okay, thanks for that. I mean, I think we need to all of us give a great thanks to the arbitration team. The fact that we are going to be, that we're so close to launch and we've got the arbitration process up and running or up and ready to go as best we can, I think must be a real plus for the chain. So thank you to that. That's brilliant. I've got. I'm going to skim through what I've got on the agenda. Bounty system, Rob, is there anything we want to talk about on the bounty system?
I know there was a working group chair arbitration meeting that I didn't attend. I recused myself as the admin of the Pi software. So James, I don't know if you had anything to add to that. I'm waiting on the results of that to implement into the slicing Pi. Other than that, I think everyone has been trying to get all their last contributions in and approved. So continue to do that. And yeah, it looks like things are shaping up, and we're figuring out, the path to proceed here.
Am I right in thinking that we've got a call after this one, James, for the bounty group?
Yeah, James Davis at Good Block. Yes, we have a bounty system call after this one every week, as we always do. We don't have anything really pressing to talk about this week, but in general, we'll be answering questions and things like that. So if anybody has any questions about contributions that they've made or the process or anything, please at any time feel free to join that bounty call and we can talk about it. Like Rob said, we had an arbitration, our first arbitration. It went well. We're always learning and figuring out the process as we go a little bit, but it's been great, and I appreciate everybody's flexibility on that.
Don't forget to track your time. That's it.
Yeah, let's make sure we're getting in that Pi slicer, guys, and getting our time put in under the correct ruling. Okay. And I also, a quick heads up, just to make sure that I know I don't do this sometimes, and I'm looking over there to see whether the working group chairs has got anything, but also can we just make sure that we keep an eye on the working group chairs channel, that because that's often somewhere that we get sidelined a little bit. So can we make sure we're doing that, please? James, can I come back to you for community rewards? Is there anything we need to talk about?
The biggest thing happening on community rewards I want to bring up is that signups for community rewards are closing today. So if you know anybody who wants to sign up for community rewards, today is the last day. The other thing is that we're going to open the submission form starting tomorrow, and in reality, maybe end of day today. And what that means is that people can start submitting their one submission with all their links starting tomorrow. We just want to make it really clear, there's no hurry. Submission doesn't close until a week after activation, so please keep posting these social media links because it's important to us. We want you to be rewarded as much as you can.
Okay, thanks for that, James. Okay, DAP outreach or DAP's outreach. I've seen there's quite a bit of chat on the Slack channels about this. I don't know whether anybody wants to come in and.
It's a Sayed. I can comment on that. We are very close to announce a DAP regarding cards and tokens. And in that announcement, we are making some kind of graphics art you may have seen with some of the pictures. Pictures can be added or deleted. So I have a question put there. If someone want to delete his picture due to maybe privacy concerns or something, let us know. And if someone want to add his picture, they can also tell us now, because there will be different kind of cards. Maybe you have seen that in the journal. I have put in 2-3 places in the channel. So if anyone has objection, please let me know. If no one will object, I will think everyone is happy. That's all.
think everyone is happy that.
Believe that Ed yesterday and team with a lot of help. I think hat is off actually to Madeline at Amplified for providing a lot of testing and assistance there as well. So between the two of them, Ed has submitted a new version of removal of the kick features. There was something small I think we noticed where it's happening at the beginning. It is undergoing testing right now in the new StageNet, which is up, and that may necessitate launching a new testnet. But again, we're very happy that any of these things we can
just put it in the contract, Douglas, not starting the whole thing.
Oh, just pushing the contract.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you were here, man, what are you?
Well, I mean, you started going. I just thought that you could. You got it. You know. If you'd like me to continue, then so yeah, the new feature would just require us to launch the system contract, which should be fairly easy, considering we still have the EOSIO account under control. We also changed the voting algorithm slightly. Once again, there was not so much an error, but a possibility for gaming if you were the first producer on the network, because we had one of the factors being elastic. It was a factor that was the total number of producers currently on the system. And if you were the first person on, then you would be 1/1, which would give you full stake, even though the next producers that came on the system would have far less stake. And in order to get full stake, they'd have to vote for you because you'd be the only other option, leaving you in the #1 position until there were enough producers to unvote you. It's something that would normalize over time, but we decided that we would go a different direction, and that should be pushed onto the testnet at the same time as the kick feature. Additionally, the rest of the Good Block team is working on merging the current contracts from the source repository into the EOSIO contracts repository, and that's going to be an ongoing effort over the next few days. And we will, I think, have that completed maybe mid to late next week. And then we should have the hopefully third and final version of the trail service contract, which will involve voting for the arbitration, ratify, amend, and worker proposal systems done by the end of this week. And then we'll push that last version into testing. And then once we've tested it to satisfaction, we'll hopefully be able to push that onto the test net as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Anybody else want to contribute on the development side of things? Okay. Exchange outreach. Roger, Beth.
Yeah, this is Roger from Telos UK Yellow team, and just announcing this week the Swap Online #4 exchange that's going to list Telos. So well done to Douglas. I think you were the key behind that. I don't know if you want to say anything about it, but that's great news.
Thanks, Roger. Just, you know, we're all doing our part.
Okay, thanks for that. That's brilliant. More the merrier when it comes to exchanges, clearly. Okay, external comms, you and Beth again, Roger, or is that all? Is there anything to talk about there?
Nothing new to update on that at the moment.
Okay. I've been hacking through and deleting some of these chair proposals, and I actually could have got rid of governance, I think, as well, but I'll probably do that next time. Adam's not here, and I don't want to talk about governance. I don't think Douglas does, so I think we'll move on. Unless he does.
I only want to say that I think we're in good shape in governance. I believe we need to figure out how to get some translations of our governance documents underway. So that's going to be something that maybe I mentioned this in translation. Maybe we need a different type of translation. We need a professional, sort of a legal translation. So if anyone just a general call here, if anybody happens to have any ideas there, please reach out to governance or translation or me directly, and we'll try and figure that out. Thank you.
I've got a question about governance. Is there any one pager available that describes all the differences in governance between Telos and EOS? I haven't been able to follow all of the stuff everyone here is producing, but I am getting asked a lot frequently about what's different about Telos governance. And I think if we had just a one pager of concisely all the differences, that would help get the word out a little more. You know, so I'm just curious if there's anywhere that I can refer people. I know a lot of things are sort of fragmented right now.
Yeah, I don't know that there is right now. I think that's, I'm really glad you brought that up. I think I've also seen this in channels, and I think it would be great. So maybe external comms and I could possibly work together on making that. That's great.
That'd be
Please.
super helpful. And on another note, like, I know I'll be on a panel in Oslo representing Telos, and I want to make sure that anything, I have all the nuances figured out, so I'm not misrepresenting the project too.
I also talked to Mark this morning about a one pager for define, just like ABC list for BP requirements from the Ricardian. That will probably also be really helpful.
Okay.
I think it'll be helpful for all of us.
Ping external comms with these as well, just so they're and then we'll deal with them there. I think those are great suggestions, and yeah, it's nice that we're at a place where what we want are a bunch of one pager communications to show all the stuff we're doing. I think that's great, and great suggestions. We'll get on those.
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm sure that there's quite a few of us going to Oslo who would really benefit from having those. If we're all singing from the same hymn sheet on that one, that'd be fantastic. So yeah, thanks for that, Rob. That's great. We'll definitely get on that. Okay, network maintenance. Take it away, guys.
Yeah, we launched a new testnet on Friday. Injected all the Genesis accounts and 103 recovered key accounts that we were able to give people access to, and there was a large amount of Telos in those recovered keys. I was surprised. We launched 3 stage nets yesterday, testing the fixes for the bugs that Peter spoke of, and have seen positive results. So the voting's fixed, the false kicking is fixed, and looking forward to pushing those contracts to the testnet.
JT, can we powwow sometime offline after this call about whether some of those things are fixed enough to go to green, or do you have a assessment of that? I think it's certainly with kicking that we were waiting for network's assessment of whether that was a green check. Yeah.
Yeah, we could talk after the meeting. I think it probably could be.
Okay, guys, thanks for that. Anybody else want to come in on network, or has that covered it? Okay, great. So we haven't got anything from marketing social media at the moment. Telos Foundation, I actually made that note there just as, but I'm happy Douglas or Beth to jump in, but Beth made a super document regarding the foundation, and just to make sure that you go on the channel if you're a nominee and check that document out, just to make sure you're fully aware of what the document says. So again, so you know what you're sort of getting into, and I think that's important that we all do that. I know myself and one or two other guys and Beth are going to be looking at working closely to get in the sort of nuts and bolts of the foundation up and running as quick as we can, because I think we've got a bit of a job of work to do there. So keep your eyes peeled on the 2 different channels. But please remember, only communication for the nominees in the nominees channel. Any other discussion in the foundation channel, please. Otherwise, we get a little bit confused. But yeah, great work on that one, Beth. Thank you very much for that. Does anybody want to come back on the foundation thing? No? Okay, that's great. Thank you. Translations, other than what Douglas has already said, is there anything else we want to talk about on the translations?
At this moment, no updates for the translations, except what Douglas already said.
Thank you very much. Okay, RAM group, we've got some typing going on in that one. Jan, do you want to have the floor for a few moments?
Yeah. This is Jan Dutchios and your interim RAM director speaking. Just quickly, following the approval of the TIP, we've drafted a process how to actually set up these two accounts and assign all the permissions that need to be assigned. That's been I put it an hour ago into the StageNet channel. So people who are interested, especially the AVP, should have a look, and we'd very much like to get feedback because maybe it's not, it can be improved. Next steps will be actually testing those accounts that they work as planned. And we'll be working on a process to collect all the public keys that we need to get this working when the AVPs set up the channel, set up the chain. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Douglas.
I'm just to clarify, is that going to go in the current StageNet that's going now, or is that going to be tested in a future launch rehearsal?
No, I'm gonna try to implement it in the current StageNet as it sits. We already have the RAM accounts created. In fact, in the test net, if you go in and look, those RAM accounts are also created there. They're not multi-sig. They're just owned by, they're active on a key. But we did buy the RAM and did the testing there.
That's great. Thanks.
Got to take a little tweaking.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice. It's nice if we have some time to tweak that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. So unless I've missed a chair or anybody's got anything else to talk about on the general catch up on the channels, then I shall move on to the next item on the agenda, which is new submissions. Seems to be a slight issue around this one. Even though it was on the agenda last week, unfortunately Rob or Adam weren't able to present it, so this is the first time that it's come to this group formally. So Rob, would you like to introduce the tips, please?
Sure. Thanks for giving me the floor. Yeah, it's probably good that we didn't introduce these on Friday because there's a lot of spirited discussion
I noticed that
allowed us to revise. So we'll start with tip 32. I just pushed these into GitHub. If you want, I can share my screen as well to make it easier for people to follow along. So can you see this? Okay, so this is a tip to propose a vesting schedule for Telos Foundation rewards pool tokens. This is essentially a tip to do something that has been discussed since July informally, but was never actually scheduled on the roadmap. So the motivation is we're creating a giant pot of money and we're allocating it to people in the TLG, and rather than allow 18 million Telos to be liquid from day one, I think it would be the responsible thing to do to allow these to be slowly emitted and slowly made liquid over time. There are a lot of examples of this within delegated proof of stake blockchains. The example that we're kind of looking towards is Steam Power, for those who are familiar with the Steam network. Steam Power allows, it's a vested balance. It's the first iteration of the same staking mechanisms that are in EOS. The divesting schedule is 13 weeks and you get 1/13 every week when you're powering down. So there's a few reasons why we feel this is important. First of all, it sends a good signal to the market that Telos contributors are in this for the long run. We're not just attempting to loot and run Telos. We're not just going to have, millions of tokens up front that we could dump on the market on day one if we wanted to. Not saying anyone here will, but theoretically that could happen if we don't do something like this. And yeah, so it allows the market to sort of bake in the TFRP rewards rather than have that uncertainty up front of are these all going to be dumped or not. I know there's concern about doing this for a number of reasons. A lot of the concern seems to be this is last minute, we're trying to launch. we've only got one chance to do this. If we launch, we can't put a vesting schedule in post-launch. So it's the same rationale as some of the other tips that we've approved recently. Like, we get one chance to get this right. It's right now or before launch, essentially. This is very standard for tech startups, for other blockchain token-based startups. Founders tokens are usually on a 2-year schedule at least. We're proposing a 1-year schedule. We're proposing that all of the Telos founding members also get to tap into that slowly over time, so you could get 1/52nd every week, similar to Steam. So you could still tap this over time and use it to pay for things. So the rationale is just like, this is the responsible thing to do. In our opinion, this is something that has been discussed up front. We're printing probably conservatively at least $8 million worth of Telos. We shouldn't make that all liquid on day one. This is an accountability and an assurance mechanism to show the greater Telos community that we're aligned with this project for a longer period of time, and that we're not just going to sell. And I'm not trying to accuse anyone of wanting to do that. I'm just saying, like, we should hold ourselves to a high standard. We are getting special treatment. We are getting more than 40,000 Telos tokens from day one, which no one else is. And so we should bake in additional assurance mechanisms around this. This changed from Adam's original proposal, which had this whole reg arbitrator Ricardian contract and all of these other things. I think we can make it really simple and just make it simply a custom unstaking period for special accounts. That means that these accounts will start unstaking from day one, and they'll have the same mechanisms as a Steam power down. So you get 1/52nd of the total that you are granted every week over a year. So up for discussion, the total period and the period by which a portion of the tokens become available. We're just picking 1 year and every week for these values, but those are up for discussion. So yeah, if we want to, I don't know if we just want to introduce these, Jim, or if we want feedback right now, or how this normally goes.
I think we want feedback now, Rob, if that's okay. I think there's been a lot of discussion on Slack, and the discussions have been, like you say, spirited, but they have been actually quite limited with the amount of people taking part. A lot of it happened overnight, so I was asleep. I do sleep. But also I think a lot of people, I mean, I don't feel as if I'm quite confident enough to actually put a judgment on this. So I'd like to hear what other people think as well. So
cool.
I think
I've got one more thing before we get there. I do want to say that by doing it this way, the tokens can be used as any stake tokens. They could be voted with, they could be delegated, so they could be used to power things like good grants. They could, delegated to dApps and things like that. So it's not like these tokens are totally just inaccessible for a year. It's just they can't be sold right away. That's kind of the key point here. Okay, so I'll turn over the floor now.
Thank you. If you could sort of indicate to me who wants to speak, if you can drop your name in the chat, that'll be helpful as well. But we'll see how we can play this. I have got a lot of people on the call today. We're up to 45, which I think is pretty close to one of our maximums. So I think I've heard Syed talking. So do you want to go first, please? And then just let me know.
Yes. So it's Syed from Sweden Coordinate. Generally, I think I mentioned in the chart, I have no problem with the staking, but there are two things I want to mention. I think there should be some kind of limit. If someone has less than 40,000 Telos tokens, I think there's no, we should not enforce on those people. Secondly, I think the example with the Steam is not right. In Steam, the inflation is 10%. In Steam, the inflation is 10%, so it's a whole different token metrics. So I think we can't compare with Steam because there's a huge chance of going things down. So only these two comments. But generally, I have no objection if the rest of the community is agree. Yeah.
So clarification there, I was just pointing to Steam as an example of a similar mechanism, not saying we should implement the Steam mechanism exactly. And yeah, Steam has a different inflation rate, but that's kind of separate from how a power down mechanism works.
Okay, I am going to say that we're going to discuss this for a while, because I think we may as well use the time that we've got here to do that. So we won't take a vote today because this has got to bake in the channels, because that's our procedure. But we can discuss this a little. Ian, do you want to speak to this?
I'm sorry, did you call on me?
Yes, Ian. I just wondered if you got a comment.
I thought Justin had a question first, just to interrupt. Sorry.
Justin, go.
I apologize. Justin.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead quickly. My question to Rob is, do we know how much development work is involved?
I will defer to Jesse if he's on the call, because Jesse and I were talking about this yesterday, and I believe he already had an idea around how it could be implemented. So Jesse, are you here? You might not have made it, but I personally...
No, I am here.
Oh, okay,
I am here.
cool.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Jesse, go ahead, please.
Yeah. There's two things. One, when I was suggesting a process, I was suggesting a contract that they could be locked up in, and then they would be released. And I thought that could be a simple process. But it seems like what this tip describes is actually kind of a whole new account, special account that has special staking, numbers. So that might be a bit more. I haven't really thought through what that would mean.
Yeah.
So that would be my concern, because my approach would not have allowed you to use the tokens. They would be locked up until you got them, and then they would be treated the same as everybody else's tokens at that point. So.
Gotcha. The way I look at this is we have a clear example of a mechanism like this called the Block 1 account in EOS. And essentially, if we could study how that is implemented and then basically create a way to inject the TFRP accounts in a similar manner that essentially copies how those are implemented, or the Block 1 accounts implemented, but changes the schedules. So it's not 10 years, it's 1 year. It's not they get a portion of it every year, it's they get a portion of it every week. So in my opinion, for a competent C++ core protocol developer that is familiar with this, they could probably perform the analysis within a day, implement it within a day or another day, and then test it for a third day. And that, I'm talking like 24 hours total. So like working days, right? Not like 3 days straight. So that would be my guess. My guess is like, this isn't that far-fetched. We have clear examples of how this could work in other delegated proof of stake blockchains. We have the Block 1 account. There are examples of doing this. I think it's a good idea. I would support delaying an additional week in order to make sure we got this in.
Douglas, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First, I'll say the Block 1 code is actually available to us. I've seen it already some time ago. It doesn't release it in chunks. It releases it as a constant trickle stream, just as a point of information. And it's quite short. So that would be available if we ultimately decide to do this in that same way. My questions are this. I noticed that neither a threshold nor a preloaded, a front-loaded amount of availability are anticipated currently. Could there be a threshold under which, if you have received that, somebody who's received less than that amount, whatever it may be, would not be subject to it, right? So that smaller players who this really shouldn't apply to can be free to use their tokens however they choose. And secondly, so I think that's something we can discuss. And then secondly, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the concept of front loading some percentage of this. Often in in similar vesting schedules. Some portion is available immediately. I know that for certain uses, basically network benefit uses, I've actually kind of promised a certain amount myself to some groups to enable things to be used for liquidity and whatnot. And so I would want to understand that. And then finally, I'd say that we want to make sure that teams, if this is applied, teams would be able to divvy up amongst their team members prior to this being applied. And because so those are my questions.
I personally feel the hybrid approach is the best compromise, because I know there are people in the group that would like, and to Marlon's point, like, yeah, there's been a ton of work that have gone into it to date, and it makes sense for some of that pay to be liquid. So I'm cool with that. I didn't add it to the proposal yet, but that could be an addendum. So I think that's a good hybrid approach. So like maybe 20% liquid, 80% not liquid, and then also the same concept, or not same, but the idea of having a liquid balance and a staking balance. I think this goes along with what we were talking about from the bounty system work group of having multiple keys. So James was asking for multiple keys from people. And I think one key could represent your liquid account, and the other one could represent your staked account, to make it sort of easy to execute rather than making it more complicated. And I also totally support like teams allowing the individuals on their team to have their stakes separately. Like at EOS Detroit, we're going to combine all ours, but I think that's the decision that should be on the team. And so, yeah, I support that. So I personally just want to see something. I'm not going to be draconian about how it's implemented. I just think this is a really good idea, and it will cover some of our bases when it comes to criticism we may receive from increasing the rewards pool by 3x and then not having any sort of time-based schedule.
Sure. Can I follow up on,
go ahead.
You mentioned regarding the threshold? Can we discuss for a moment if there's a possibility that setting a high threshold could actually reach the majority of our goals while eliminating the majority of the negatives, right? So if, as it appears, there is a group of maybe 30-ish people who will, 25 to 30 people, let's say, who will have a pretty high stake, pretty high amount, and then there will be a lot of people who will have, who will have less than that. And I think it could be possible if we set the stake high enough that we could eliminate a lot of the objections that are about this being too intrusive for people. Do you have any thoughts about that? And do you have any proposal about what might achieve that?
Yeah, great question. The original number from our first discussion, Douglas, I believe was 300,000. Of course, the pool size has changed and all this, but I think that's fair. 300,000 is a considerable amount. It's probably going to be worth over 100 grand USD easily by, I think, a lot of our estimates. And
especially if we're talking about individuals, right? Individuals and who have over 300,000. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it totally is. I think 300,000 was the original number. I think it's a good number to stick with personally. So yeah, I would say I haven't done a ton of analysis or data analysis of like how many people would be affected by certain thresholds or anything like that. So I don't really have any data-driven information to convey here, but 300,000 feels right to me.
So yeah, no, I tend to agree. I think as somebody who would be affected by that, I think that if we are, I think it's fine. It's certainly in line with the plans that I think most of us at Good Block have. I can't speak for the individuals, but I think we all are hodlers for Telos. but I think that paired with some kind of reasonable front loading might, like for example, let's say for as a starting place, let's say it was 35% front loaded, applied to accounts 300,000 and above, and was a trickle feed over 1 year for the balance. Just to try to throw some numbers at it, and then you guys can pick apart the numbers and tell me how ridiculous they are. But if we were to look at that, I think what the effect would be is it would omit most people who are receiving a large number of people, and probably the people who most need to clear the decks a bit. It would to support their effort to date. It would also lock up a very large amount, actually. We'd have to do the numbers, but I think it would lock up.
Sorry, hold up. Brandon Lovejoy, your camera's on, dude.
All right. No, well said. Thank you. Well spotted. So I think, okay. And also I'm gonna wrap up my diatribe. Sorry. If we have numbers sort of like that, I think it means that people who are getting a lot can weather the storm, and people who need it can use it. And it's really more about finding that amount that people who are going to be capped could sort of need to use up front. Anyone have thoughts about those numbers or better numbers than that?
Just a quick comment. This is Brett Jeffrey. I don't know what the right number would be, but my thoughts are that I would hate to see somebody really need that money to stay afloat as a BP for some reason. They break a hip, or they lose their job, or whatever, and they have to fall by the wayside because they can't afford to stay in the game. And they could have sold those tokens and stayed in the game, but they couldn't because they didn't have access to them. I don't know that any of us are looking to sell our tokens. The only reason why we might sell our tokens is because we absolutely positively had to, in which case it would be a shame to have the tokens and not be able to use them if you desperately needed to have access to them because you needed to pay your bills, or lose your house, or lose your server or something.
Yeah, those are existential risks that I don't think we can, they shouldn't factor into the equation. And plus, we've front-loaded BP inflation in the first year to help BPs cover their bootstrapping costs. So I don't think we should be looking to the TFRP grants as that mechanism, because we already passed another tip to do that, personally. But I see where you're coming from, Brett. I just don't think that we can cover every single possible edge case here.
Well, I think in an earlier version that I read, there was some kind of the ability for some sort of evaluation in those kind of cases. Did I misread that, or is there? I mean, there could potentially be an escape clause for somebody, but
I guess if there was some clause that said, due to extenuating circumstances, you can apply, and then some governance board forum would have to approve it and then pass an order to the BPs, and they could implement it by moving your stake with supermajority powers or something like that.
It could just be the prods, frankly. We could
right, exactly,
slim it down. I mean, and we don't actually need anything to do that. We might want to just capture that so that it feels allowed, so that nobody later has to say, hey, we have, what's our authority to do this? That might be, I think it, Brett makes a very good point. We do not know what the future will bring. People have brought a lot to this, and I think that as a group, I think we can get the benefits while still leaving a little bit of an escape hatch for somebody who's in a unforeseen situation like this. I would support that. I think that's a good thing, and even if it hopefully would never be used, right? I do think I will say on this, we as a group have I think have voted to increase our own stake. I think it might be worth giving a bit of a give back to the community in this type of protection, if we can find the right levels for everything. I do agree, Rob, and I think as long as it allows things to be staked, we are going to have Rex, and we probably will have Chintai soon. That means that people who need to get income from their staking can use one or both of those systems to capture value from their staked coins, even if they're frozen, even if they can't be transacted.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. Anybody else want to weigh in? We will come back to this on the next call, but just to weigh into this, I presume that you can write in some figures to the tip, Rob. But anyway, anybody else want to come in first before Rob answers that question?
Jim, I'll go ahead and take you up on your invitation to speak. So hi, everyone. This is Ian with Amplified. Amplified plans to be voting no against tip 32, and I'd like to explain what our reasoning is. First, our view is that if the objective of tip 32 is to prevent sell pressure or to prevent dumping of tokens on the market, I don't think this is going to be effective. Currently, the launch group will earn about 5% of the circulating tokens, and over 93% of the tokens will go to EOS addresses in the airdrop. So if the objective is to prevent sell pressure, we should put the EOS addresses on a vesting schedule. That'll be much more effective than trying to limit 5% of the tokens that are in circulation. That's the first point. The second point is that I know people have made that this will be able to lock in long-term contribution from the launch group contributors. I don't find this logic persuasive. To me, this sounds like an appeal to sunk cost, and it's not logic that will be persuading Amplified. We should try to lock in long-term contributors because the technology is awesome and this community is awesome, and we've got the highest performing chain on the network. We shouldn't have to rely on vesting schedules in order to do that. Third, I know some people have argued that this tip will prevent the impression from forming in the public that we're here to get rich quick and that this is a money grab opportunity. I don't think this tip is necessary in order to prevent that impression. We've already restricted our reward to 5% of the tokens that will be in circulation. This is much less than pretty much every other ICO team out there. And even other instances like Zcash, where they keep 10% of each block reward to the founders. I think by having a modest reward for the launch group, we can signal quite clearly and effectively to the market this is not a money grab opportunity for us. My fourth point here is that the market is very bearish. And I just feel very uncomfortable with the idea that we have to limit ourselves and our ability to maneuver in this market. It's very possible that there are some system level shocks that could happen, such as the implosion of Tether or increased regulatory clampdowns. And it would be really unfortunate if we weren't able to maneuver through the market in the case of such of an event. My final point is that as a matter of principle, I don't think this makes sense. We've worked hard for these tokens. We've earned them. We should be able to do with them as we wish. Similarly, the idea of having a certain threshold in which this rule would apply strikes me as deeply unfair. If you are a smaller contributor that's going to expect a smaller reward from these tokens, and you are uncomfortable putting yourself on a vesting schedule, then why would you put others on a vesting schedule who have incurred much more material costs than you have in order to launch this network? So those are my points. I'm happy to speak in private with anybody on Slack who wants to learn further. Thank you.
I'd like to reply to a few of your points, Ian. Thank you for weighing in. First of all, the market conditions, no one can predict the future. Let's not let the current bearish market influence our decisions, because it could be bullish next week for all we know. Beyond that, we're getting special treatment. We're printing ourselves a big bag of money, which we've even increased higher, and putting a time schedule in is the responsible thing to do in any venture where you have an advantage compared to everyone else. I know a lot of people have spent a lot of money. I think that those concerns can be alleviated through Douglas's proposal, which is a hybrid proposal to make some portion of the tokens liquid up front. We are airdropping to EOS. This has been the plan all along, but the EOS, we're also limiting them. And so I think that due to the spirit of Telos that was originally envisioned by Douglas and Goodblock, of changing the voting dynamics, of reducing whale influence. We're creating new whales with this, even if relative to other projects, 5% seems like a little, it's still a very significant amount. And we should, at the very least, provide some assurance mechanisms that we're doing this in good faith. It was a strategic maneuver. I did support the increase in tokens. You did persuade me, Ian. Like, you're right, like we can strategically capitalize this great group of teams and individual contributors. And I was convinced by that. I do feel that the important thing to do next is to show the market like, okay, yeah, we did vote to strategically capitalize ourselves more than we had originally anticipated. Things have changed. However, we will give the assurance that not all of this is going to be dumped on the market within the first month. And that's, I mean, I've seen Steam go through PR issues. I've seen BitShares go through PR issues. I've seen a lot of these networks change the assumptions at the last minute and have a black eye for years. And I think Telos has amazing PR and a lot of awesome things going for it. I also believe that a lot of people that support Telos may not know about all the tips we've passed lately. And I feel like there's still some level of baking in, or baking of the new changes that we're proposing that is happening and needs to be done for people to really realize what Telos is when it launches. And so I feel like there's actually a decent amount of PR coming our way if we don't do something like this. I'm not mean that to threaten anyone. It's just I've seen the changes or assumptions change at the last minute. I've seen it give projects a black eye for multiple years. It'd be a real shame if we chilled the momentum and the positive PR of Telos just because we didn't want to implement a simple time schedule. And I believe that there's some configuration here that allows the majority of people who need some money up front to still be able to tap into that while still having time.
Okay, Rob, thanks for that. I'm going to call this to a halt now because we will have a chance to discuss this again once. Hopefully, Rob will be able to go back and work with Douglas.
Okay, I had one more thing, Jim.
Okay.
I believe that we are all getting a huge premium by being Telos launch contributors. I think we're getting way more per hour than we would working doing whatever we do, like our work roles or whatever in other cases. I believe we're getting like at least a 10x to 100x premium on our labor by being in the TLG. And that's another reason, like it's actually, you know, we've been blessed with an amazing opportunity here. Let's make the decisions that will allow us to align Telos for the long term and not just sort of.
Okay, Rob, I've got you, and I think we've all heard you, and I think we all do appreciate that. Is there anybody else who wants to come in on this at the moment?
If I may?
Yeah, please do.
Madeline from Amplified here. I don't want to go too deep into this. I just have one issue I want to point out. I take a bit of a problem with how Rob is saying that we are special and privileged. From my point of view, everyone who gets free Telos is special and privileged. That money is free. That Telos comes to everyone. It's 380 million of them. Yeah, I feel like the fact that we are getting a bit more, I don't know. I don't see myself as privileged.
Okay, Madeline. I think we hear what you're saying, and I think I do hear both sides of that story. We're all working very hard on this, and we all need to make sure that we all feel that we are getting what we think we're worth. And I do hear what Rob's saying. I do think we are. I feel I'm in a privileged position to be on this project. So, but I also realise that everyone's working really hard. I'm going to stop that there unless there's anybody else, because we have got a chance to discuss it in Slack. It's got to come back to another call, and hopefully we can have some numbers on the tip moving forward. Rob, there's another tip that to be discussed.
Yeah, this is Marlon. Actually, sorry, I jumped in kind of late, but I echo the sentiment that that Madeline just mentioned. Again, we've all been working here for quite a while, and we should have the ability to do as we please with our tokens. Vesting, the arguments put forth for vesting makes absolutely no sense in our case, and should not apply to us. And again, I apologize for getting late.
Okay.
But I'll leave it there.
Okay, Marlon, thank you very much for that. I applaud everyone to go and read the Slack channels where both Marlon and Rob's points have been put and argued out. So I don't want to come back to you, Rob, on that for a minute, because I think we've had plenty of chance to do that. Could you talk about tip 2033, because we've got 15 minutes to get off this call, please?
Sure. Let's see. Yes, and I just want to echo everyone. Yeah, we have taken a lot of risks. We're still getting a huge premium on our labor. Positive. So anyways,
I said you couldn't come in on that, Rob, but there you go.
Back to what we're doing. I'm just wanted to clarify. You'll see. So tip 33 is to create voting restrictions on Telos Foundation rewards pool tokens. This is also in the spirit of why Telos was created in the first place, to mitigate ill influence. And we are essentially, can whoever's, Brett, can you mute? There's someone, okay, thanks. Okay, so yeah, one of the things that drew us to Telos was the fact that we're working towards creating voting dynamics that are more of a popular vote, more, mitigating the whale influence. So if we create a bunch of new whales through the Telos Foundation's rewards pool and allow them to vote with those tokens, we're essentially just creating new whales, which is, in my opinion, against the original intent. Yeah, that's essentially the rationale here. And the idea is to create a Ricardian clause that disallows TFRP grant tokens to be voted beyond 40K. So you can still vote 40K of your TFRP tokens, because that's the same standard that we were trying to create from the outset. However, everyone who's in the TLG doesn't get to just instantly vote themselves in as a BP under this, because that's against the original spirit of Telos. So that's what we're going with here. I have a feeling this is going to be unpopular based on what's been happening on StageNet, which Douglas just clued me in to yesterday. But we still wanted to propose it and give the proposal a fair opportunity to be discussed. And yeah, and Marlon, we're not trying to force anyone. This is a proposal again. So thank you.
Okay, we'll just go with 5 minutes on this. If anybody else wants to ask Rob a question or wants to talk about the tip, again, we won't be voted on until next week. Anybody?
This is Jesse from Kalios. Just kind of goes from a technical perspective back to the rules that are going to be applied here. I know you said to put in a Ricardian, so there's no code to be written, but it still feels like there's a lot of maybe ambiguity in how this could be enforced. I mean, they're fungible tokens, so you won't know exactly which ones came from where. I could sell mine, could buy them back. It's easily gameable. And we're basically devaluing the tokens we get because they aren't votable. So, they're now not the same as everybody else's tokens until you trade wash them or something like that. It just seems they're a hard one to enforce. Obviously, we should do the right thing and expect people to, but it just feels like it'll be a hard one to really enforce.
Yeah, it's more of like an honor pledge, really. We're all here. We can put this in the TBNOA. We can say, you're subject to some punitive damages via arbitration if you are detected to have, gone against the spirit of this agreement, essentially. So that's how we envision it. It doesn't have to be programmatically enforced. I agree there are definitely attack vectors, but the idea is to create some level of just an honor pledge amongst the people in the TLG, like, hey, we're not trying to be new whales, we're trying to maintain the spirit of Telos that Douglas envisioned from the beginning.
Douglas?
I just have a quick question about the voting part. So previously, I remember when we need to basically activate the mainnet or activate the net, we need to surpass a certain threshold. That's what happened with EOS. And I remember previously, at least previously, Telos was planning to have a threshold there. So if we limit our votes, it may make it harder for us to actually activate the mainnet.
We voted not to activate based on 15% voting. We're voting at a fixed time of 1 million blocks. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah. No. It's a great thing to mention. I do have a question about. I think there's, regardless of what we think about this in broad strokes, there's a little devil in the details here that I think it's unclear. For example, there's a proposed amendment to the reg producer contract that let's see, I agree to not circumvent or aid another block producer in circumventing checks and balances put in place by reg reward contract. And there's also something I believe about wash trading, which would be, just selling a bunch and then buying them back. Well, that's clear enough. I think there are a lot of cases where, for example, if you're a block producer and you have these limited sort of B share tokens that are limited in their voting, but you earn rewards as a block producer. Are you expected to only sell when you sell, if you need to sell some tokens to keep your ongoing processes, one could sell from their limited tokens and keep their pool of earned tokens, which I expect to have no voting restriction. Is that going to be seen as a wash trading? Is that going to be seen as trying to circumvent that? I think there's a number of scenarios there where it's just going to be difficult to be as clear as we need to be to give people confidence going forward. So I have some concern. I have some big questions aside. I have concerns about the little things. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. This is something that I think collectively all the people in this group, if we were aligned and saying, hey, we want to maintain the original spirit of Telos as defined by Douglas Horn of Good Block of changing the voting dynamics, then we can figure out a solution. Yeah, there's attack vectors. There's like this solution would require a few of us to come together. Ian, all you need is text in an MD file for it to be a Ricardian. Yes, Ricardians are stronger if you can enforce them programmatically on chain. That does not mean they have to be enforced programmatically on chain to be a Ricardian. They just have to be in a Ricardian file, and then arbitrators can rule within that context. So just to be really clear, it does not have to be programmatically enforced to be in a Ricardian. And an example of this is the first clause of the EOS Constitution, which says all members will not commit violence against other members. There's no way to enforce that on chain, right? But it's still there. It's still a Ricardian. So just to be super clear on
that. If I may respond quite briefly, I don't think it's productive for us to get into a debate on the terminology of a Ricardian contract. My understanding is coming from what I've learned directly from Ian Grigg through years of having worked with him. And he obviously is the big advocate of Ricardian contracts. The bottom line point is that a Ricardian contract needs to have some sort of programmatic enforcement. Otherwise, it's not machine readable. And it may very well be the case that we can enforce this without any sort of programmatic on-chain backend. That's totally fine. But in that case, it's just a written agreement, either a literal contract that's binding or a pledge that's non-binding. But I just want to be, productive with the terminology here, because I'm concerned that some people might hear Ricardian, and that sounds like a panacea that's going to solve everything. If we are literally going to be Ricardian, there has to be some programmatic component to this, and that would delay the launch. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks for that, guys. Well, at the moment, I think it's probably worth drawing this to a close unless anybody else wants to speak on this. I think it's clear that we need a little bit more debate in Slack and a little bit more, maybe a la Jan's tip, a little bit of development on the tips to coming forward. So unless anybody is screaming at me that they've not been heard, I'm going to move us forward. Okay, thanks for that. So again, we need to have more than 2 people talking in the Slack channels, please, or 3 people on these things, and let's get everybody involved and everybody, so we actually come to an agreement that everyone can be happy with. Okay, so we've got the Telos launch checklist. I'm going to skip over that because we are running close to time, and we have got our go no-go call tomorrow at 1700 UTC, slight change in time. Douglas did actually mention part of section 5 when he talked to JT about the possibility of changing the one of the checklists. So that's possibly what we can talk about, and hopefully, if I could ask Douglas and James and people at Goodblock to update that checklist as quickly as they can from this meeting, I'd appreciate it. So when people are waking up at different times, they can have a look at that before we can come on to the call tomorrow. So I'd urge you to do that for me, please. I appreciate that.
We absolutely will reassess before the call tomorrow.
Thank you. And the confirmation of the next meeting, next date and time for this meeting is Friday, the 9th of November at 1700 UTC. Again, I'm very conscious of when we started this group that we are trying to disband it as quickly as we can. But even if we do go for a go tomorrow, I still think we can rename it. And we're going to need a call on Friday, whether we go or we don't go tomorrow. So I'm not putting any spin on that at all. I'm just saying that we're going to have to continue with this interim group until activation, as far as I can see, and we have a foundation to then lean on. Without no more ado, I'm going to call this meeting to an end. Cheerio, everybody.
See ya, Jerry from Blind Block Art, leaving.
Here's Jerry from Blind Block Art. Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody.
Jim.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
I like it.
Bye,
Jim.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Jim, and everyone.
Have a great week, everybody.